Story 1. I build scale model ships because I'm lame. Unfortunately, the genre is dominated by often angry boomers who seem to think that the rest of us owe them everything because they managed to get old. Specifics. I have a lot of rare resin kits I've collected over the years and have decided to offload some stuff that were mostly impulse buys. I checked eBay's sold auctions and other examples of recent sales and priced my items accordingly. I paid for a vendor booth at a show. Folks were cool for the most part. Many did bargain with me, and that's okay. I sold some bundles and moved on reasonable offers. Cue in this old bastard who evidently was alive purely on his own self-persecution and bitterness. The guy saw a large resin model kit of a Japanese battleship that I had priced at $375. This was the original retail with recent sales well north of $400. He came by a few times. He grumbled about my prices being too high for people on fixed income. I just ignored him. Toward the end of the show, he came back to my booth and offered me $100 for it. I flatly refused. He told me he'd always wanted that kit, would build it, and that he's a disabled veteran that feels better when he builds. I was unsurprised given his previous whining at my booth and prior shows. I'm not joking when I say he tends to walk even more laboriously when trying to rip off a vendor. I told him, "Thank you for your service." I told him I'd sell him the kit for $325 cash, which is what I paid for it. The dude flew into a rage, accused me of disrespecting veterans. He then told me, in my face, that I take advantage of old people who don't have the money for expensive things. Note, the dude has gout breath. If you know, you know. I reminded him that this is a hobby, not his home, not his food bill, not his transportation. After calling me everything but a white boy, the man kicks my vendor table and stomps away like a petulant sixth grader. Worst part? I had other entitled boomer modelers asking me why I couldn't work with him because of aforementioned reasons. They were less antagonistic, but the apologetics were clear. These same people wonder why younger folk don't attend scale model shows or why it's becoming increasingly hard to find vendors who don't simply use an online auction or marketplace. I'm all down with giving deals, but trying to guilt someone into compliance is pretty awful. I do hope Gout Breath found some $20 model to keep him satisfied. Edit. The item in question is a not assembled kit, not a completed ship. If I was commission building again, I'd be charging a lot more for the hours and hours it takes to make something even halfway decent. Story 2. This happened a few years ago when I was trying to get back into reading. High school and college kind of destroyed my love for the hobby by forcing me to read the classics. Some of them were good, a lot of them are outdated and boring, and as a person with ADHD, forcing me to read a 500-page book that I hated was agonizing. But I've been an avid player of Dungeons and Dragons for a while, so I decided to try and rekindle the hobby by buying some fantasy books. I did some research before I went out to the store and had a short list of what I wanted to buy. Off to Barnes & Noble I went. Barnes & Noble, as I've learned, tends to lump sci-fi and fantasy together in the same section. But given I knew exactly what I was looking for, it didn't bother me much. I entered the aisle, and already there was a frustrated-looking Karen with 2 books in her hands, looking between them. Not reading them, just staring perplexed at the covers. From a quick glance, she seemed to be about in her 70s with short gray hair, though the scowling pout on her face made her look like a petulant child. I must have seemed like I knew what I was doing. After all, I had come in already knowing what I wanted. It took about 30 seconds for me to quickly pick out the 3 books I wanted to try. But obviously that was not quick enough to avoid being flagged down. "Excuse me, young man," the Karen called after me, right before I was about to step out of the aisle. So close to avoiding this interaction. I work in customer service, though, so reflexively, I turned on the smile. "Yes, ma'am. Can't a woman get some help over here?" There's a slight pause, and I'm about to tell her that I'll send an employee right over, but she continues talking. "I need some help picking out a gift for my grandson." I deflate a little bit, as I don't much like interacting with strangers, but this woman hasn't done anything rude yet, so I decide to try and be nice. Well, what kind of book is he looking for? My grandson likes fantasy, she says. I take a look at the books in her hands, both of which are very clearly not fantasy, as they both have spaceships on the front. For now, I keep the condescending tone out of my voice. Me? I'm sorry, but both of those are sci-fi books. Karen: well, how was I possibly supposed to know that? Me: well, anything with a spaceship or any kind of technology on the cover is a dead giveaway for starters. Karen: my grandson says that sci-fi is stupid. I won't risk giving him some garbage story. You need to give me a fantasy book for my grandson. Me: look, ma'am, I don't work here. If you want a recommendation, I can. Karen: oh, that's nonsense. You've been helping me already, and now you're just trying to be lazy. I begin losing my patience. I deal with these types of people at my place of work, and I refuse to be nice to them outside of work. Me: well, here's an idea for you. How about you read the back of the book? You know, the little section that says what the book is about, instead of just staring at the covers. Karen: how dare you talk back to me? It's not my job to know what the books are about, it's yours. Me: oh yeah, must be such a strain to read 5 sentences. You definitely need to have people do that for you. Or hell, why not just Google popular fantasy books? You have a phone, don't you? At this point, Karen is red in the face. Karen: I'm not going to spend my time on reading this nothing genre. I only waste my time on books of substance. I just want a gift for my grandson. Me: like I said, Google fantasy books and pick a random title if you're so averse to reading. Karen: what does averse mean? Use words that people can understand. I look at her with a raised eyebrow for a moment or two and then just turn around. Bye, Karen. She grabs my arm, and at this point I am very careful. I'm a 6'5" man, and this is a tiny old woman. If I react to her grabbing me, even reflexively, it could be very bad. Karen: you're not going anywhere. Where is your manager? I begin to say, but stop as I have an idea. With as tall as I am, I can easily see over the aisles and find the corner of the store that is furthest away from the cash registers. Hiding my smirk, I say, oh, he's over in the biographies section, it's over there. I point with my free arm to the back corner of the store. Karen tugs on my arm and says, you're coming with me. But given my height and weight, I just stay firmly planted and watch this small woman try to drag me away. After about a minute, she huffs, face nearly purple with rage now as she says, you wait here, and storms off to the back of the store. I do no such thing. Rather, I go and buy my books at the cash register. Just as the cashier is handing my bag and receipt, I hear, there he is. I frown at that and turn to see that she has actually found the manager, who is looking confused. Karen: that's the employee who shoved me. Having already received my books, and knowing that no one there could do anything to actually stop me, I walked out of the store as the Karen tried to convince the manager that I was just so horrible to her. The manager nodded at me to leave. I got in my car and left, not ever knowing how that turned out. I was never contacted by police, nor was I banned from the store, so clearly her claim didn't stick. I still visit this store regularly today, and I have never seen this woman again. Story 3. In comes my GF21F. She is the best thing to happen to me and has helped me constantly through my worst and have always supported me and helped me. I have been with her since the end of high school, and somehow I am still with her even though she is so amazing. But what happens when someone who likes to have control over everyone and everything has her son meet a GF? Insecurity and jealousy. Me and my GF have always had to take turnabout with my mum, so I would go to her house, then she would have to come to mine. However, if my mum had anxiety or felt lonely, she would ask my GF to come to mine, or ask me to tell my GF. If I tried to say no, she would always go on and keep asking, bring stuff up to the point where it is just easier to say yes. Which is okay, I guess. I understand she feels lonely and anxious sometimes. However, if me or my GF wanted to go to my GF's house more than once in a row, my mom would start having a go at me about it, how it's unfair and it's supposed to her turn to come here. Me or my GF never said anything about that. We never cared that much, we just want to see each other. I mainly wanted to go to my GF's as well, since my mom constantly asks me to do stuff to help out and just springs on me to go out and get stuff for her, and my GF has to help too. However, when it came to me living between my sisters and grandpa's, things changed. I didn't want to be at any of them since my papa's place was so small and uncomfortable, and my sisters, I was only there at night and they went to bed early. So I wanted to go to hers, and obviously she wanted that too. My mom didn't like this, though she constantly complained I would go there no matter how I tried explaining it. My mom would complain about living there every day, but if I said, well, I don't want to be here all the time since I don't like being here, she would not care since I was leaving and seeing my GF. So my mom took that as my GF forced me to run around for her to her place, since my GF is rude and doesn't want to go to my grandpa's place. This led to one day after we got a new house to live at, my GF started coming over again. Me and my GF were doing our own thing and had dinner plans booked and ready. However, my mom said, I am going to make a roast tonight if we want to eat it too, and I said, well, we have dinner booked. My mom kept trying to argue back about it, even though we wanted to go out, and I said to tell my brother, who was at the shop getting the dinner, not to get too much since my mom was on the phone with him. So the night goes on and me and my GF start leaving for dinner, where my mom goes, where are you going? And I say we are going out for dinner like we had planned and booked. My mom still brought everything and cooked everything for a big roast, even after I said I would be out and everything. I said, I told you so, I am still going out, so she started getting mad. My mom ends up having a go at my GF and saying how I run around for my GF for those 3 months and how I am running to my GF for dinner. While this goes on, I try stand up for my GF, but my mom just doesn't listen. So me and my GF just go out to dinner. My GF tells me she is uncomfortable coming to mine again, and I'm like, all good, since I don't want to be home most of the time anyway because my anxiety and sadness. A few days later, my mom messages my GF that only talks about how she maybe shouldn't have said what she said, and that my GF should come over for me. My GF responds with how she doesn't feel respected, so she still doesn't want to come over, especially since mom didn't even apologize. This made my mom go off. She started talking to my family and some of my extended family, and they started saying mean things about my GF and insulting her in front of me, and or my mom would say to me. Apparently my GF thinks she above everyone since she just didn't want to get disrespected. So I got so sad obviously about it, and when I am emotional I get quiet. I don't want to speak to anyone. So my mom took that personally and started yelling at me for not talking and treating her like crap. So it made me feel worse about the situation. I couldn't tell my GF she got my family all involved at first since it was heartbreaking, but I eventually told her they said stuff about her, but not exactly what. Then my mom wanted to have my GF stop carrying this crap on. So my mom messaged my GF to have a fresh start for the new year and forget everything. My GF responded with how she doesn't want to be vulnerable to be treated like that again, and have my family judge her while she is there. My mom took this personally. She yelled at me about it, and how I need to control my 21-year-old little girl. She kept saying how my GF's response was even rude, yet when I asked she couldn't explain it. And we argue and I try say, well, why would she feel comfortable with everything everyone said? But of course through 3 days, or arguing, my mother didn't listen to one thing I said. On the 3rd day, though, my mom had one of my siblings or something hack into my Messenger, which is the app I message my GF the most on, and they looked through my private messages. With me approving of my GF's messages and calling her mad since I tell my GF how my mom has been treating me. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I started packing my bags, and my mom started doing petty things in her anger. She came into my room for 10 seconds, and I heard my keys to my car get moved when they were on top of my drawers. Later, I eventually found them under my bed somehow, and she still lied, saying she didn't touch them. Then she threatened to call the police if I took my car since when I got it. She said it will be better in her name since it will be cheaper, so I said fine and started grabbing my stuff from the car. So she decides to lock me in the garage, and I have nothing, and I'm in my PJs. So I start walking even though it was the middle of the night before she stopped me as I was going down to street to come back in. She eventually calmed down and let me take my car to be safe. But she kept trying to convince me to stay, but I wasn't going to. So I left, and I have been out of home for 2.5 weeks. Luckily, I get to stay at my GF's grandparents' house, and they have been incredibly nice to me. I'm desperately looking for a job as I only get 1 shift a week and a government payment every 2 weeks. I still talk to my mom, but never has been the same since. I feel so bad for my GF, and my mind has been getting torn apart between everything, but it's getting better now. I feel this guilt like I betrayed my family because they all believe what my mom says. But I know my GF is just standing her ground, which I was too weak to do for so long, and so I got manipulated constantly. Story 4. So there I was, just minding my own business, doing a little retail therapy at the mall. You know, the usual weekend vibe. The fluorescent lights, the smell of cinnamon buns wafting from the food court, it was all so typical. Little did I know that my day was about to take a wild turn into the realm of entitled madness. I strutted out of the mall, bags in hand, feeling like I'd conquered the sales racks. As I approached my car, though, the air shifted. There was this commotion in the parking lot, and being the curious cat that I am, I had to check it out. Now, picture this. A bunch of teenagers doing their TikTok dance routine. You know, the one where they look like they're trying to summon rain with their funky moves. It was all harmless fun until a giant Escalade, driven by what I can only describe as the human embodiment of entitlement, comes barreling in like it's auditioning for a Fast and Furious movie. The poor kid in the TikTok squad, let's call him Jaden, was in the middle of his hip-swaying masterpiece when the Escalade decided to join the party without an invite. Bam! Jaden's world went from TikTok stardom to a painful crash landing. The Escalade had given him a not-so-gentle love tap. I rushed over, dropping my shopping bags, because priorities, right? Jaden's on the ground, clutching his arm, wincing in pain. And who emerges from the monstrous vehicle? Karen. Classic Karen haircut, oversized sunglasses, and a look on her face that screamed, "I can't be bothered." "Get up, you little faker," she spat at Jaden, as if he'd just pulled off the most elaborate prank of the century. Now, I don't know what TikTok pranks she's been watching, but breaking someone's arm for views seemed a bit extreme, even by internet standards. I couldn't just stand there, so I waded into the mess, throwing my hands up like, "What the heck, Karen?" I told her. "Lady, he's not faking it. Look at him, he's in agony." Karen, instead of showing an ounce of remorse, decides to play doctor. She kneels down, grabs Jaden's injured arm, and gives it a good yank. The poor kid screamed, and I swear, I saw tears in his eyes. That's when I let my inner New Yorker out. "What is wrong with you, lady? You can't just run people over and then try to arm wrestle them back to health." But Karen wasn't having any of it. She looked at me like I was some annoying insect ruining her picnic. "Mind your own business, honey. Kids these days, always pulling pranks for attention." I could feel my blood pressure rising, and I knew this situation needed some serious adulting. "No, this is my business. You hit him with your tank of a car, and now you're assaulting him. We're calling the cops." And that's exactly what I did. I pulled out my phone, hit up 911, and gave them the lowdown on Karen and her reckless escapade. Meanwhile, Karen's still standing there, probably rehearsing her "Do you know who I am?" speech. The cops roll up, and Karen immediately goes into full diva mode. "Do you know who I am? This is ridiculous. I have places to be." The officer, a no-nonsense type, responds, "Lady, it doesn't matter who you are. You hit someone, and now you're causing a scene. You're coming with us." Karen, undeterred, tries to charm her way out of it. "Look, officers, I'm a very important person. I can't be dealing with this nonsense." The cop, unimpressed, retorts, "Well, important person or not, you're still going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions." I stood there, feeling a weird mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Karen's SUV was being impounded. Jaden was on his way to the hospital, and justice was being served. As they cuffed Karen, she looked at me with the kind of glare that could curdle milk. "You'll regret this." I just shrugged. Regret saving a kid from getting run over? Doubt it. So, there we were, Karen getting escorted to the back seat of a police car like she was an extra in a crime drama. I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief that all this chaos was unfolding in a mall parking lot. The cops were surprisingly chill, considering they were dealing with a Karen on a rampage. One of them came over to take my statement, and I spilled the whole tea. The officer nodded, gave me a pat on the back, and said, "Good job looking out for the kid. We'll handle it from here." Meanwhile, Karen, in the back of the police car, was still trying to play her entitled card. "You'll all pay for this. My lawyer will hear about it." The officer just shut the car door, muttering something about people and their lawyers. Classic Karen move, right? Always threatening with legal action like it's the ultimate trump card. As the scene was starting to wind down, I took a moment to check on Jaden. His friends were gathered around him, probably still in shock from the whole ordeal. The poor guy was pale, but he managed a weak smile when he saw me. "Thanks for stepping in," he said, his voice strained. "No problem, dude. No one messes with my fellow TikTokers," I replied, trying to lighten the mood. He chuckled, wincing a bit. "Guess this is my most dramatic TikTok yet." I grinned. "You'll get 1 million views for sure. When Karen met TikTok, it's a hit already." Jaden's friends started laughing, and the tension in the air began to dissipate. It was like we were all collectively saying, "Screw you, Karen, we're not letting you ruin our vibe." The ambulance arrived to take Jaden to the hospital, and I promised to swing by later to check on him. As they loaded him into the ambulance, he threw up a peace sign, a true TikTok trooper even in the face of adversity. With the immediate drama over, I turned my attention back to the cops. Karen was still throwing a tantrum, yelling something about being late for a spa appointment. The officer, clearly done with her antics, just gave me a knowing look. "Thanks again for your help, ma'am. We've dealt with our fair share of entitled folks, but this one takes the cake." I chuckled. "Tell me about it. Glad I could be of service." The officer tipped his hat, which felt like a move straight out of an old western. Story 5. So, let me give you some info about this situation. I'm 17 years old when this happened. I live in the Netherlands, and I work at a local supermarket where I work as a stock clerk. Don't really know how to translate that. Almost every week, we have a discount on certain items. It's called the bonus, and sometimes, when you buy 2-3 items from one brand, you get some special product from that brand. A beer glass when you buy a 6-pack of that brand. A Lipton iced tea hat when you buy a certain amount of bottles, etc. That week, when you bought 3 items from this kid's brand, you get this rather creepy-looking doll. This is basically what the story is based around. And oh boy, am I glad we don't offer kids toys with these products anymore. Just like everyone in this subreddit, I never thought something like this would happen to me. But here we go. It did. I was working in the afternoon on a Thursday like usual when a kid walks by slowly. Of course, I don't think anything of this as I am just doing my job. She walks by about 3 times, and the 4th time she asks me if the dolls are out of stock. I explained to her that more will be coming that evening, and that she would unfortunately have to wait. She asked how late, and I told her that they would probably arrive after closing time, because of a delayed shipment, so she would have to wait until the next day. She walked away with quite a sad face, and I felt bad for her. Although I continued working, I didn't really think about it anymore. Fast forward a bit to around 2 hours later. It's almost closing time, just 5 more minutes, and I was pretty tired. This is where the entitled mother comes in, without the entitled kid. She looked angry. The mother stomps straight towards me and quite angrily asks me if I was the boy that told her daughter that she couldn't have one of those dolls. Me, being tired, looks at her with a confused face, and after processing the question, I remember the kid that asked for the doll. Me, yes, that's me. Entitled mother, do you know you made my little girl cry? Me, I am sorry for upsetting your daughter, but the dolls are out of stock and won't arrive until. She cuts me off. I don't care about the time it arrives. You will get me a doll right now, or I will make sure you get fired. I will do everything to make sure more dolls arrive as soon as possible, but the store closes in 5 minutes and She cuts me off again. I want to look in the back. I don't believe you. She was pretty much screaming at the moment. I saw a colleague of mine in another part of the store look up from the work he was doing and listen to where the noise was coming from. He just continued doing his work, and I did not want to call him because I thought I could handle this myself. Nah. I bring the entitled mother to the back where we keep the dolls when we have them. I normally never let people into this section because it's only for employees, but I didn't want her to go super Karen, so I let her in. I grab one of the terminals. It's a small device that we use to keep track of the stock in the warehouse and the quantity of products we order in the next shipment. I showed her that there are currently no dolls in the store, and before I could show her the order we placed for new dolls, she grabbed the terminal, which is worth around €1,400 or $1,600, and throws it on the ground. I immediately asked my boss to come to the warehouse through my earpiece. The entitled mother knows she can't touch me or cause me any harm because A. I am under the age of 18, so it's basically child abuse, and B. There is cameras everywhere, and she already knew that. But apparently only point of interest her, and she proceeds to kick all the wagons of goods we have standing in the warehouse. She also threw 6 packs of wine and beer on the floor, which made a horrible mess. After about 1 minute of this constant fear in me, my boss and 3 team leaders arrive in the warehouse to take a look at the situation. My boss was, well, not happy with the situation. Apparently he took some kind of fight training because he grabs the entitled mother in a certain position so she is pinned on the ground with nowhere to move. One of the team leaders is asked to call the police. Within 20 minutes, the police arrived at our warehouse. I was surprised that the woman did not attempt to kick or slap my boss, because she has been laying on the ground for this long. The 2 policemen are guided to the office by 2 team leaders, while me, the 3rd team leader, and my boss are still in the back of the store. After about 10 minutes, which felt like an eternity for me, the policemen and team leaders came back, and one of the policemen put the woman in handcuffs. After that, we all go to the office. The entitled mother is giving me death glares the entire way there. She also kind of whisperingly swears at me and calls me all the names out there. When we get to the office, I feared I would have done something wrong that would indeed get me fired. And this begins with the entitled mother having the right to talk before me. Of course, she lies in a pretty big way, literally saying that I touched her kid. The officers probably already knew that was not the case and asked some questions about that to me. I was struggling to find the right words because I have never been in a situation like this, and I was on the verge of crying. I told them they needed to check the camera footage from 2.5 hours before this. They found the moment where the girl came up to me and I didn't put a finger near her. The boss complimented me for keeping enough distance due to COVID, but that didn't really come through to me because I could only think of what could happen if they did not believe me. I knew the proof was there that I didn't touch the entitled kid at all. That was nice to know. The policeman knew enough and took the woman away from us, probably off to the police station where she deserves to be. My boss and team leaders compliment me on handling the situation and come with me to the warehouse to help me clean up. My boss noticed I wasn't in a good state to continue working, and he gave me a can of soda and told me I could go to the break room to take a break to cool down from this. Eventually, he just sent me home because I was too emotional from all the threats the WFI Brenneman was constantly telling me. When I came home, I told my parents the entire story, and they were shocked. They asked me if I wanted to continue working there, and I did. There was nothing wrong with the place itself, just very rarely the people that buy stuff there. My boss and I later made the rule of not doing this with dolls and children's toys anymore, because this happened a few times before, not this bad. It would solve the problem of entitled kids, and I have never seen one ever since. Story 6. I was just minding my own business at the local supermarket, right? Got my earphones in, blasting some tunes, doing my shopping dance down the aisles. You know the vibe. Now, let me tell you about this dude, Tommy. He's this cool autistic kid, always rocking this dope jacket covered in patches. You can't miss him. Tommy's got this thing with loud noises. It's like kryptonite to him, man. So he's walking around, doing his own thing, hands covering his ears, trying to avoid the chaos of the supermarket. No big deal, right? Well, enter Karen. Now, Karen, she's got this blonde bob that screams, "I want to speak to the manager," and she's pushing her cart like she owns the place. She sees Tommy doing his ear-covering routine and flips her lid. "Hey, you, what's your problem?" Karen yells, pointing her perfectly manicured finger at Tommy. Tommy, being the chill dude he is, doesn't even notice her. He's in his own world, vibing to some tunes that probably only he can hear. But Karen ain't having it. She storms over to him, starts waving her hands in his face like she's swatting flies. I can see this from the cereal aisle, and I'm thinking, oh man, this can't end well. Karen's shouting something about respect and manners. I pull out my earphones, thinking maybe I can defuse the situation. But before I can say a word, Karen straight up sucker punches Tommy in the face. I'm talking full on, right hook to the jaw kind of punch. Tommy staggers back, looking stunned. I'm standing there like, did this really just happen? And before I can process it, this big dude who's been watching the whole thing comes charging in, yelling, "You can't be hitting people." Turns out he's an off-duty cop, and he whips out these cuffs like he's been waiting for a moment like this his whole life. Karen's face goes from enraged to, oh crap, real quick. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," he says, and I swear the whole supermarket erupts in cheers. It's like we're at a ball game, and the home team just scored the winning goal. I'm low-key feeling like I'm in an episode of a reality show. The cop's radio is crackling with chatter about an assault in the supermarket, and I'm just standing there with my cart of groceries like, well, this wasn't on my shopping list today. Karen, still acting all entitled, tries to pull the "do you know who I am" card. The cop ain't having it. He's all, "I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You don't get to go around punching people." By this point, a crowd has gathered, and someone's recording the whole thing on their phone. It's like the entire store has turned into a live episode of World's Wildest Supermarket Fights. The cop radios for backup, and another officer shows up. They cuff Karen, and as they're leading her out, she's still yelling about her rights and how she's going to sue everyone in the store. Meanwhile, Tommy's sitting on a stack of cereal boxes, looking a bit dazed. I go over to check on him, and he's like, "Man, that lady hits harder than my little brother." I'm trying not to laugh because, seriously, what else can you do in a situation like this? The cop takes our statements, and I find myself recounting the story like I'm a witness to some absurd comedy sketch. The store manager comes over, apologizing left and right, offering to comp our groceries. Tommy's all cool about it, though. He's like, "I just wanted some Pop-Tarts, man." Eventually, the whole thing settles down. Karen gets hauled off in a police car, the crowd disperses, and Tommy and I are left standing there with our grocery carts, still half expecting Ashton Kutcher to pop out and tell us we've been punked. And that, my friends, is how I spent an otherwise mundane Wednesday afternoon, witnessing a Karen getting cuffed for punching an autistic dude in a supermarket. Life's crazy, ain't it?